Alrighty. So, The Acolyte ended. I've had a couple days to ruminate on it, and I think we should talk. Just to be clear, we're not going to talk about this. I feel like every single discussion about this show ends up centering on this, which I'm not judging that per se, because I find this concerning, interesting to talk about, necessary to talk about. I've already made a video about it. So I'm not judging people for focusing the conversation on that, but it has kind of drowned out any discussion of the actual quality of the show. But I talked about this in a video recently. I can't remember which one, but it was my Assassin's Creed video. People have an impulse when this sort of thing happens to just swing the opposite direction and say, oh, I have to defend this because these people hate it. It doesn't matter my own personal opinion. This has become a cultural landmark, a cultural moment that people hate this for bad reasons, because it doesn't have any white leads in it, because it centers around themes they don't like, and they don't like diversity, and they don't like that a character was maybe gay. And because it has all that stuff, you have to take the defensive on it. And I get that. I do. It's a very social media driven way to engage with media, where you're not really talking about the show, you're talking about stuff beyond the show. You're talking about the production and the casting and the marketing and all of these elements around the thing, but not really about the thing itself. And if you spend any time on social media, you've seen this happen a whole bunch of times. And it's not exclusive to this side or that side. It's going to depend on whatever the zeitgeist or the thing about the show is that makes this happen. But all that to say, I don't want to talk about that. I made my review bombing video. We can talk about that over there. I just want to talk about the actual show, because I think it's an interesting show to talk about. I think this show, it would have been provocative even without any of the stuff surrounding it, because in a very real way, this show is kind of Star Wars heresy. This is a thing people often say about Knights of the Old Republic 2, a game which I have not played. It's a little bit before my time, but I understand a lot about that game, and Star Wars heresy is the theme of that game. And to a lesser extent, I think it is this one as well, because a main point of this show is really digging down into the fundamental flaws with the Jedi. And if you like the Jedi, I suppose, then you're going to be annoyed by that. And people have said, they've argued, oh, well, Star Wars, you say the Jedi are bad for ages, that's the point of the prequels. Not like this, though. There is a difference. In the prequels, the institution of the Jedi has problems, but not the individual people. Like, Obi-Wan Kenobi is a good guy. Mace Windu, even if he's a bit of a dick, is a good guy who wants to do good things. And they never have really gone this far in to show how just there's fundamental flaws in Jedi philosophy, and how that feeling that you're always doing the right thing can lead you to doing a terrible thing, which is essentially the kind of the thesis of the show. It's a problem. Let's give overall views. I think conceptually this show's like a 9 out of 10. I think there's some really interesting ideas in here, some cool world building stuff. It's set in the High Republic era, which I love. Conceptually, I think I'm all on board for this show. Execution, it's like a 6.5. It's not the worst thing ever, but it just does not live up to what I would want it to for the stuff it's trying to tackle. So, by far the most interesting part of the show for me is Saul and his whole deal. How he starts off as this nice fatherly figure, this Qui-Gon Jinn type person, and then you learn over the course of the show that he's made mistakes driven by his own perspective and his own philosophy, and he ends up dying for it, which is maybe fair, is not. The show is very morally grey in a way more than pretty much any other show besides like Andor has been in terms of there really is no obviously right and obviously wrong perspective on the situation. And I think that's good, and I think that's interesting, and I think it makes the Star Wars universe feel so much more vivid, where it's not just these larger-than-life good and evil figures, where it's people. That's the storytelling that really works. At least it works for some characters. We'll sandwich this into the other thing, which is probably my least favourite part of the show, which is the twin Osha-May drama, which just does not work for me at all. I don't even really understand what they were going for. They do this thing, so episode 1, you've got the twins. Well, it turns out that they're twins, because I guess that's a twist. I don't think the show benefits from its weekly release, because none of the mysteries are really that exciting. There's nothing to really think about. The first answer you think of is usually what it is, which is fine. Not all mysteries have to be this big reveal, but if it's not going to be a big reveal, then you don't give people a week to speculate about it. That does you no favours. But anyway, we have Osha and we have May. Osha's the good one, May's the bad one, and then by the end of the show they've flipped. And it's very clever, you see, because in the last episode, May is dressed like Osha was in the early episodes, and Osha is dressed like May, so they look like the opposite now, and that's so clever, honestly. But the thing about having them flip like that is it devalues both of them as characters by making their motives and their goals fluid. They don't feel like set in stone characters anymore because they've flipped like this. Suddenly, what do they want? Who are they? If they can totally flip their morality like that, just on a dime. I think this is much worse for May than it is for Osha, because at least with Osha you can kind of see that curve happening a little bit. With May, by the last episode, she's just a completely different person, and there's nothing that's really triggered that change at all. She went from murdering all the Jedi for revenge to, I'm going to arrest them and bring them to the cops. And why? That doesn't track with the character that murdered the first 2 Jedi. So all of that doesn't really work for me, which is a problem because it's the central focus of the entire show. And there's so many times in this show where other stuff will happen, and I wish the show was about that instead. Like in the last episode, a senator shows up, and he's talking to Vernestra Rowe, who I have lots of thoughts on. And he says he's a senator who doesn't trust the Jedi, and he wants to try and take away some of their political power. And he talks to Vernestra about how the lie of the Jedi isn't that they control the Force, but that they control their emotions, which is impossible because you cannot do that and eventually someone will burst, which of course we know is absolutely true. That's Anakin Skywalker. And when he showed up, I thought, wow, can I watch a show about this guy instead? This politician trying to take down this obviously overpowered, weird religious sect that seems to have so much power over the government. I think we should put some limitations on these people's powers. I'm with you, my dude. And I was talking to my friend and podcast co-host Nathan about this, and we both agreed that if they had seeded this guy as a sort of C-plot throughout the show, you know, why he started to feel this way and what he's doing, and having more of a back and forth between him and Vernestra, and having the show be more expansive than the singular focus on the Osha-May drama, I think it would have been a much more solid show, because there would be more going on. That's like Andor, right? You've got Andor stuff going on, you've got Dedra in the ISB, you've got Cyril doing his stuff, and then you've got Mon Mothma doing the high political espionage stuff. You've got all these different perspectives, and having more perspectives and more things going on, that's kind of the fundamental benefit of a TV show, is you have more time to expand on different things going on. And if you can just focus exclusively on a single storyline, but that's not really using the TV format to its full advantage. And that is a problem not exclusive to this show at all. That's kind of a wide problem with almost all of the Disney Plus shows, is they always just feel like this could have been a movie, which is the worst critique you can give to a TV show. Because basically it's saying that 70% of the show is just a waste of time. It's just pointless filler when you could have condensed this all down and told a better story that was more focused. Because that's what a movie is for. It's for focused storytelling, whereas a TV show is for wider, more expansive storytelling. I think in terms of production and all this show looks great. I think it's one of the best looking Star Wars shows. I think all the costumes are great. I love all the ship design and set design. The fight scenes are fantastic, with really cool Force choreography and martial arts incorporated into it. They're all super engaging to watch. But the story just doesn't click in the way that it should. Smilo Ran, for example. Khmer, I think is his name. Costume is fantastic. I love the helmet. I love I love how hot he is. I love the way he fights. His fight scene in episode 4, 5 is fantastic. It's some of the coolest action in all of Star Wars. But what's his deal? I don't know. We'll find out in season 2, I guess. And that's really annoying, because are we going to get season 2? Who knows? It doesn't feel at all like this is a season of television. It just feels like we're going to spin some wheels and some interesting stuff is going to happen. And I've been feeling that with a lot of the Disney Plus shows, and it's so frustrating. I felt the same way about Ahsoka, felt the same way about Mandalorian Season 3. Like, when they leave the planet and Darth Plagueis crawls out from behind a rock and goes, "Oh, I'm here too." I mean, he doesn't laugh, because that would be too interesting. He just stands there and he watches, and you're like, what the fuck does that mean? Darth Plagueis is there. Okay, maybe he should have been in the show doing things. Maybe having him just show up and maybe imply that he's behind this, or maybe he's just a creep who's spying on them naked in the bath. I don't know, but he's there, and you'll find out more in season 2, maybe. That's not very satisfying television. The cameo impulse in the Disney Plus shows ruins this kind of stuff, because a cameo on its own is not inherently interesting. You need to, if you want these characters to mean something, they have to do stuff. And I would happily watch a show about Darth Plagueis scheming in the background and controlling all the stuff behind the scenes. I would like that. But that's not what the show is. That's something that film theory can speculate about. And Vernestra Rwoh. Oh boy. So, if you don't know, Vernestra is a very important character from the High Republic novels. I'm not up to date. I haven't read any of Phase 2 or 3 yet. I kind of fell off for a little bit. I do want to get back to it, but it's a different conversation. But Vernestra in this show basically has nothing to do with the character in the books, to the point where I don't know why they bothered. She has her laser whip, which, sure, but she's gone from... Her deal in the novels is that she's a prodigy. She was one of the youngest Jedi Knights ever. She's super good at stuff, and that's her deal. I'm not explaining it very well. She's a good character. She's nice. She's a very typical Jedi. And in this, she has become the face of Jedi bureaucracy, which is fine because you need a character in that role for the show. I just don't know why they made it Vernestra Rwoh. It's odd to me that she's the one who became that role. And I don't dislike her part in the show. I think it's interesting. I like that they showed that she basically covered it up as to not cause a diplomatic incident that would potentially destroy the Jedi. That makes sense. But as for her deal and Khmer and all this, we'll find out in season 2, maybe. As I was watching week to week, I was invested. I was eager to tune in week to week. I think I'm making this sound more negative than I feel about it. On a minute-to-minute basis, it's a fine enough show to watch, but I really don't feel any feeling to go and watch it again. I don't feel like I missed anything. They did this whole thing with the flashback where they split it into 2 episodes, and I liked that. I liked that you see the different perspectives, where from Saul's perspective, all the witches look like they're up to evil, whereas we already know that, they're nice, or at least that's the perspective of the kids that have on them. And where's the truth? Somewhere in the middle, probably. I think that's cool, but I watched it and I got it. I don't feel like there was anything more going on there that I missed. It's the same feeling I have for a lot of Disney Plus shows. If someone asks me, oh, should I watch this show? I'll say, oh, if you have Disney Plus, then give it a watch. But if every single show on Disney Plus is a show that you should only watch if you already have Disney Plus, then what are we doing here? What's the point of any of this if it's just churning the wheel to keep stuff on the platform as opposed to making any genuine artistry? And not that this isn't art, obviously it is, but it just feels... I just feel whatever about it at the end of the day. I think it's got some interesting ideas that I don't think it knows fully what to do with. I think it has an interesting framing that it doesn't use to its full advantage. I think it has a lot of interesting characters that it will maybe explore better in next season, if we get one. And to be clear, this show, because of all the drama and the backlash and stuff, that there was a kind of a real negative impulse going into this. I was hyped for this show. I was fully ready for this to be an Andor level good show because it's exactly what I wanted, which is we're getting away from all of the established characters. We are not backed down by Skywalkers or any of that nonsense. It's a separate era. We can do something different. We can do something weird. And when the show is doing that, it's good. But at the same time, at the end of the day, it still falls back on Star Wars stuff. It focuses on things that don't matter, like all this stuff about the twins being born from a virgin you couldn't pay me to care about, because that's not what makes any of this interesting. People are mad about that because people are always mad about something, but who cares? Who cares how they were made? Because that's not what's interesting about the story. That's just made up fantasy nonsense. That doesn't have anything to do with philosophy and the politics of the Jedi and all that stuff. The actual character-driven stuff. That's just stuff. And yet the entire conflict of the last few episodes all revolves around this virgins thing and the creation of the twins and blah blah blah. They're not twins, they're copies of the same person or some nonsense. I don't know. Again, I'm definitely coming across as more negative than I actually feel. I wanted this show to be more than it is, because if it was a fantastic masterpiece, then I would feel better about championing it as some sort of cultural moment, but it's not that. It's a fine show with some cool ideas and a character that's very interesting. It's another Disney Plus Star Wars show. This is another thing I was talking with Nathan about. As far as Disney Plus Star Wars shows go, it's pretty good. It's one of the top ones. But that still puts it leagues below actually good TV shows. And if this wasn't a Star Wars show, saturated in Star Wars stuff, would I really keep watching it? Probably not. And I don't think it's good for a Star Wars show. It's not saying much, right? Is it better than The Bad Batch? Absolutely not. Not by a million years. It's not better than Andor. That's still comparing it to Star Wars shows. You want to compare it to, like, Game of Thrones, then fuck it. It's nowhere close, right? Yes, it's provocative, and I like that it's provocative, but that's not enough for it to really be something special. It's a fine TV show, and that's it's almost worse than being bad. It's like it's whatever. And again, this is relevant to me going through the Assassin's Creed games, because that's how a lot of people feel about the modern Assassin's Creed games. You're the biggest media company in the world with one of the biggest brands in the world, and you're making stuff that's fine. Why bother? Why chug out all this stuff on a yearly basis instead of using this stuff to make some truly great stuff, which I know can be done. It's done every so often and just keeps stringing you along like a rat with cocaine, right? Whereas it's that random rewards. Sometimes you go into the Star Wars thing and it's the best thing you've ever seen, and sometimes it's just water. Anyway, I'm sure Star Wars Outlaws will be amazing, right guys? That's about what I had to say about that. Thank you very much for watching, and a very special thank you to my wonderful patrons for your continued support. If you'd like to see your name up here, or just support the things I do, then please consider signing up. It would mean a lot to me. As well as a like, a comment, a share, a subscribe, and ring the bell. If you want to have the talk about that stuff, then yes, I did do a video about review bombing a few weeks ago when the show first came out. It doesn't really have anything to do with the content of the show itself, it's more about the stuff surrounding and review bombing in general, so if you want to talk about that, it's up here. Or for something different, as I said, I'm going through all of the Assassin's Creed games right now, so you can find them in that playlist down here. I'm gonna go take a nap.